Okay, next video, the GPU. So, the GPU is a graphical processing unit. It's commonly referred to as a GPU, video card, or graphics card. These are specialized circuits designed to speed up how fast your computer can generate images. These use PCIe connections and have ports that connect to a monitor or TV to display output. So on the bottom here, we have an RTX 3090. These are made by NVIDIA. It is currently like one of the best cards you can get. I believe these two, the bottom middle and bottom right, are RX 580s. The one on the right, you can see a port demonstration. So you can see that it has two DisplayPort ports, one HDMI port, and another DisplayPort port. So, what does that all mean? Since that description is a bit lacking, let's take a live demonstration from video games. Simply put, the GPU handles the graphics portion of the game. So it's going to be what's rendering the models, environments, displaying the textures, and playing animations. So these are loaded onto the GPU's VRAM, video RAM, a specialized type of RAM designed for the graphics card to be able to pull the information out of storage and hold it until the game needs it. This is very handy for games with lots of models. The CPU is doing the actual computing for the game. It's going to be running the code processes, so things like telling characters when to move, how the environment responds, and even telling the GPU to load up certain resources. Okay, here I am in Portal 2 to demonstrate how the GPU and CPU work in a game. So you see this cube here, you can see it, obviously, so that's going to be rendered by the GPU. But the collision itself is processed by the CPU, so when you see it bounce off the wall here, what's happening is that the CPU is doing the physics calculations to tell the collision box how to turn, and the GPU is presenting this in a visible format so the player knows, what they're going to be pushing against. Okay, so here we see this button and the door. These are both rendered by the GPU, obviously, but when the cube goes on the button, the CPU is going to be doing the code work to tell the button to open the door when it is under the condition that it is pressed. So this way, the player can go in and the borders of the door will be pushed aside. Same thing with the portals. The collision is going to the other side, the CPU is handling that, and the GPU is presenting it in a physical format. So, integrated graphics. It's of note that GPUs are actually essential for the computer to display graphics, but one doesn't actually need a graphics card to do so. So many CPUs have what's called integrated graphics, which is essentially a built-in GPU the CPU has so that the computer can actually output display. So these are very convenient for smaller computers or people that won't be doing much rendering or gaming, as they won't have to spend more on a separate unit or accommodate for space. These, however, are much slower than separate GPUs, as the CPU only has a certain amount of resources, and under integrated graphics has to work both graphics output and code work. Okay, back to the GPUs. These are actually a lot larger than you'd expect. I make sure to say this because everybody I know has been surprised with the size of a GPU the first time seeing one. So I say this because you shouldn't overestimate the size of your case. You might buy a GPU thinking that it's rather small, and then it shows up and it doesn't fit in your case, and that is a problem. So, bottom left image here, we have the CEO of NVIDIA holding an RTX 3090 card, and on the right we have some measurements of some other graphics cards. As you can see, they're rather big. I forgot which ones these are, but the size is about the same regardless. So, there are actually different types of GPUs. These are for different types of work. So, gaming GPUs are built with gaming in mind. These are specialized to load and transfer data as quickly as possible to ensure that your game won't be doing any stuttering. Workstation GPUs are built with 3D rendering in mind. Rendering, simply put, is processing 3D models to look the best they can, so you'll find these in builds of 3D animation studios and such. So gaming GPUs are going to be a lot cheaper and more commonplace than workstation GPUs. Workstation GPUs are also going to be a lot slower than gaming GPUs in gaming, obviously, but gaming GPUs are going to do 3D rendering processes much slower than workstation GPUs. You'll usually only see workstation GPUs in like company studios. I want to bring this up so that if you go and purchase a GPU, that you don't accidentally buy a workstation GPU and then have to deal with it. Okay, couple of images here. Top left, we have a workstation GPU. This is an NVIDIA Quadro RTX 5000. And bottom right, we have an NVIDIA RTX 2060 Super, and that's a gaming GPU. So if you want to know if a GPU is either for workstation or gaming, you can just do a quick Google search, and usually the manufacturer will have a page about the card, and these will usually talk about either gaming or workstation applications. Okay, power usage. GPUs are going to need quite a bit of power to run these processes. So as such, most will need to get power directly from the power supply of the computer. However, lighter, more budget cards can get enough power from the motherboard. So make sure that your power supply can provide enough energy to the GPU and that it has the right ports to power the GPU. Bottom right here, we have an MSI GTX 1650 low profile. Much smaller than any other graphics card. These do not need power from the power supply, so you can just plug it in and use it right off the motherboard. Okay, manufacturers. So today, two GPU manufacturers reign supreme. There's NVIDIA and AMD, and as we remember, AMD also makes CPUs. So while these companies build their own GPUs, NVIDIA and AMD have other companies manufacturing and distributing the cards as well, such as EVGA or MSI. Intel is very recently getting into the GPU industry, but those are very limited in availability and seem more workstation based. Intel is, as we remember, one of the two primary CPU creators. So, images on the bottom here. Bottom left, we have an NVIDIA manufactured RTX 2060. Beside it is an EVGA manufactured NVIDIA RTX 2060. To the right, we have an AMD manufactured Radeon 5500 XT. And on the right of that, we have an MSI manufactured AMD Radeon 5500 XT. Okay, recap. With all that said, GPUs are basically just big rectangular boxes that plug into the PCIe port on the motherboard. These handle graphical processing of the computer, relieving the CPU of the duty. Many of these require power from the power supply, which I will talk about next.